Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. Boom shakalaka done. Okay, I'd like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp, BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez. They're an online therapy company. They are international. They have 40,000 therapists working with them. Master's level, PhD level. All you got to do is go on, fill out some questions, and they will place you with one of those master's level or PhD level in your state, or that can do international. So thank you, betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez. Okay, on to the question, and this is a good one. So what happens if you can't or won't pay for a funeral? Who deals with that? How does this get resolved? Okay, so what I did is I went online. Now, every country is different, but in the US, if you cannot pay for a funeral, I went to everloved.com/articles/funeral-planning/what-happens-when-family-can't-afford-funeral/. So anyway, I just typed in, what happens if you can't pay for a funeral in the U.S. That popped up. It was on Everloved. What happens when a family can't afford a funeral? Funerals are very expensive. While many families are able to find the money through the generosity of their community or through other means, there are moments when they just may be completely unable to pay for a funeral or don't want to pay for the funeral. If you're in that position, it's important to make sure you've exhausted all options before making the decision to turn the body over to the state. What happens if you can't pay the funeral bill? The harsh reality is there are some circumstances where a family or individual will be completely unable to pay for a funeral even after exhausting other options. If you're unable to pay, you'll sign the body over to the coroner, who will handle the disposition of the body. If a family can't or won't pay for a funeral or afford the costs for disposition, their family members will likely be buried in an indigent cemetery, so potter's grave. A cemetery for those who can't afford to be buried elsewhere. The family will not be able to choose the cemetery or the method of disposition if they're unable to afford the funeral and need to surrender responsibility. So in other words, they're more than likely going to be cremated. That's the cheapest way of doing it. So you sign the body over to the state or to the coroner, and then the coroner will deal with how to dispose of the body. So that's basically what will happen. And listen, guys, if you're dealing with an abusive parent or grandparent or partner or whatever, and you don't want to pay for the funeral, you don't have to. Sign it over to the coroner. They will dispose of the body however they do, usually cremation. They'll usually put it into a pauper's grave. I'm going to sneeze. Woo! Anyway, so, excuse me. So yeah, they will do that. And, but you don't have any say over where or how or things like that. So if you really, truly do not care, sign the body over to the coroner, or if you're not around when they die, like let's say they die thousands of miles away, which often happens. You may be the next of kin. You may get contacted and you just basically tell them, I want nothing to do with this. Let's sign it over to the coroner or sign it over to the funeral home, because I'm not paying for this. And you don't have to. They'll, and some dishonest funeral homes will try to they'll try to guilt trip you. And you just, again, boundaries like a mother clucking boss. Seriously, you just, nope, I'm not paying for this. They were abusive to me. You don't even need to tell them that, but I would. It's like they were abusive to me. I am not paying for them. They can go to hell, direct route, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Hell no, I'm not paying for this. Do you see where I'm going with that? So yeah, absolutely. Back to the article. When someone has no family, dies, and no one is able to cover the funeral expenses or claim the body is turned over to a funeral home. The funeral home will cremate the body or bury the body in a cemetery and will charge the cost of the disposition to the estate of the deceased. Each state has its own rules regarding the estate of those who have no kin or no funds and are referred to as intestate estates. Due to this, it's advised that you check with your state laws and regulations regarding this. So yeah, really good idea to make sure. Average funeral costs, and this is what blows my mind. Average funeral costs are around $9,000. Average. That means half or above, half or below in the United States. Many families and individuals are grieving, leaving them vulnerable to sales tactics or to choosing what's right in front of them instead of shopping around. When planning a funeral, here are some costs that you should keep in mind. The cost of the funeral will depend on your chosen method of disposition and your location. Burials are significantly more expensive than cremations due to embalming, the casket price, and need for a burial plot or a burial vault, depending on where you are. Vaults are usually in areas above ground where the water table is too high to bury in the ground. But almost all families should expect to spend at least a couple $1,000s when planning a funeral. Excuse me, my allergies are just going nuts. I'm telling you, it's like we got rain and then sunshine and all of the little pollens are like, and I'm like, stop it, really, just stop. All right. It can help to understand funeral costs and what to expect when dealing with a funeral home if you have an idea of what each part of the funeral usually costs. Here are some ballpark figures on what to expect when planning a funeral. Cremation costs, non-declinable basic service fee of $2,100. Removal/transfer of the remains to the funeral home. So from wherever they died to the funeral home, $325. Embalming, $725. Use of facilities/staff for the ceremony, $500. Use of a hearse, service car, or van, $150. Basic memorial printed package, $160. Cremation fee, $485 to $1,500. Cremation casket from $60, which are usually the cardboard boxes, to $1,500. Earn $50 to $550. Average total, $4,555 to $7,510. Now that's cremation. Burial costs. Non-declinable basic fee of $2,100. Removal, $325. Embalming, $725. Other preparations of the body, so makeup, making them presentable for viewing, etc., 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 $250. Use of facilities and staff for viewing, $425. Use of facilities and staff for funeral ceremony, $500. Hearse, $325. Service van or car, $150. Basic memorial printed package, $160. Metal casket, $2,400. Median cost of a funeral with viewing and burial. Medium cost, average, $7,360. A vault will be $1,395. Average cost with the vault is $8,755. This is why I get so livid at abusers who don't plan their own funeral, who don't prepay it, who don't think that far ahead, who think they're going to live forever, etc., etc., etc. Because then the kids, usually in the middle of an emotional storm, because now they've got, remember, we still grieve the loss of that parent. I did with my dad. And I wasn't grieving the loss of him. It wasn't that, oh, gee, I'm sorry he's dead. Actually, I was like, woohoo, he's dead. But it was the loss of game over, never going to change. That's it. There is no more hope. Breath has left his body. Hope is now gone, So you're dealing with the emotional loss. You're dealing with the what ifs. You're dealing with the if onlys. You're dealing with all of that. Unscrupulous funeral places will do the hard sell. They did that with my sister-in-law when my father-in-law died. Oh, but don't you want your dad to have the best casket? He's going in the ground. Nobody's going to see this casket. He's dead. He does not know that this is a good casket. Why do you want to spend $10,000 on a casket that nobody's ever going to see? So it was a real fight between my husband and his sister to try to get the costs down because they hadn't prepaid. They hadn't done it. There was only one funeral home in town, and they took advantage of it. And you've got to have somebody there that's got cool, clear logic so that they don't take advantage of those grieving family members. And they will, and to me, that's just reprehensible. So anyway, they will try to milk you for everything you can. Don't fall for it. Religious organizations and churches. This is especially useful if you're part of a congregation or an active member of a church. Many churches will try to help a member of their congregation in emergency cases. If you're struggling to pay for a funeral, you may want to start getting in touch with local churches or churches your friends or family members attend to see if they'd be willing to help you cover funeral costs. Your results may vary, and you may find yourself in a situation where they aren't able to provide services, financial assistance, but they may be able to provide you with a place to hold the services free of charge. Churches can also help spread the word if you're trying to fundraise for a funeral, so it's probably worth asking if they'd be willing to make an announcement or share your story with the congregation. If you set up a memorial website, ask the church leader to share the URL for your fundraiser for extra engagement. Final Farewell is a charity that helps with funeral expenses for children. Their financial assistance is there for families who have lost a child and is not extended to adults. If you've recently lost a child and are struggling to pay for burial expenses, you'll want to apply on Final Farewell's website for assistance. There's government programs. Many counties and cities offer financial assistance to residents who are struggling to cover funeral expenses, especially if they're living below the poverty line. These benefits are often overlooked and can end up helping you cover critical expenses when it comes to the funeral. Keep in mind that every state varies and that some states offer assistance at all three levels: county, city, and state. So look into each one of those governmental levels, while others only offer assistance at, say, for example, the county level or maybe the state level. But it's generally pretty easy to apply for these benefits once you find them. You could try crowdfunding, but if you're dealing with an abuser and you don't want to pay for the funeral anyway, don't do it. All right, what else? Social Security benefit. Social Security pays out a one-time benefit of $255 to the surviving spouse. If the spouse and the deceased were living together. If the spouse was living apart, then additional information is needed to claim the benefit. While $255 is not a lot of money, especially when compared to the massive cost of a funeral, it can still help to cover some of the smaller expenses, flowers, programs, even a small deposit on the venue. If you're a surviving child of the deceased and there wasn't a spouse to pay out to, you may be eligible to receive death benefits. You also want to get in touch by phone at 1-800-772-1213, or you can visit Social Security's website for more information on the death benefit. So veterans often get burials. If they're hospitalized in the VA at the time of death, they're likely to be eligible up to $796 in funeral expenses. The VA can also cover transportation and cemetery costs in many cases. If the veteran was not hospitalized at the VA at the time of death, the VA will cover up to $300 of funeral expenses. If the veteran died in service after September 21st, 2001, the VA will cover up to $2,000 expenses. So apply online for the benefits. Just go to the VA. That is basically it. So basically, you're under no obligation. You are not obligated to pay for a funeral. You are not. You don't have to. If that person was abusive and you are like, no, thank you, you don't have to. Just sign, have the funeral home, or just don't even collect it. If they get in touch with you, you tell them, I turn it over to the coroner, let them deal with it. The coroner can dispose of the body however they want. Of course, they'll do the whole, but they're going to be put in a potter's field and you won't have any say, and that's fine. Then bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Seriously, that's what you do. You just turn it over to the coroner, or you just turn it over to the funeral home. The funeral home will dispose of it. It may go against the estate if there is an estate, if the person was indigent. Usually the state, county, or city will cover that. So there that is. I hope that answered your question. If you're in a different country, the rules may be different. So you would need to seriously go to Google, look up, what to do, or how does an indigent person get buried, or what if I don't want to pay for the funeral? What happens in this country? And that's kind of what I did, looking up those sites to try to find the information for you. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. Today at 2, I will be doing a meet and greet in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is fabulous. So that's it. So I will see you guys today at 2. Tomorrow, we are going to be talking about more of those fleas. So in particular, perfectionism. Perfectionism drives us crazy. we tend to be a little bit OCD about it. And we're going to talk about why and what you can do and how to start letting yourself off the hook so that you don't have to be perfect all the time. So we're going to talk about those fleas, about perfectionism tomorrow at noon Arizona Mountain Standard Time and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, you guys, be good to yourselves. Have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.